For the next panel, we're going to discuss large-scale digital transformation and how we can tackle the complexities of global logistics, leveraging technology and leveraging innovation. My name is Andre Porto. I'm head of innovation and corporate venture at Wilson Sons, which is the largest integrated operator in Brazil, talking about maritime and port operations there. We have 2 container terminals. We have 2 fleets of support vessels for offshore energy and also for port operations, logistics centers, and so on. I'm heading the innovation and the CVC of the company. So we have an open innovation program. We also have a small CVC with some investments in startups, and we helped founding an innovation hub for maritime and port sector in Latin America, based in São Paulo. So again, very pleased to meet you all and to be here. Also thanks to all Manifest people to the opportunity and to the invitation. But I'm here only to facilitate this conversation, right? We have some of the most brilliant minds in our industry right here. So I'll let them just introduce themselves, starting with you, Rob.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Ron Fritz, the Vice President of Transportation and Warehousing for iFit, with an parent company for the fitness brand Nordic Track, Proform 3Motion. We're an importer into North America, UK, Europe, Australia. I would say medium-sized importer, bringing in a lot of product. Help fit many trade bills in a 40-foot container, unfortunately. So, and this topic is really close to our heart. We're trying to track, manage the POs for our sales team.
And I'm Jim McCullen, Chief Technology Officer at Century Supply Chain Solutions. Century is a global logistics provider focused on origin cargo management. So working with iconic global brands like Amazon, QVC, Specialized Bikes, and supporting customers like iFit and helping them to get better visibility in what's happening in their supply chain, which we just heard a lot about in the last session, and I think we're going to build on that.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Glad to be here. Welcome. My name is Kirk Knopf. I'm the CEO of a company called Caleris. Caleris is the largest provider of terminal operation solutions, software to the port and terminal industry in the world. We're in about 80 countries. We also provide inland software to warehouses, distribution facilities across the globe as well. So happy to be here.
Last but not least, hello. Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Tony Zazimovich. I'm with DP World. I oversee the global retail and lifestyle vertical for the company. DP World, those of you who may not know us, we're a $20 billion organization, sizable. Most of you know us on the terminal side, but actually our logistics business is larger. And we go to market with 8 key or distinct verticals. Big in automotive, very big in tech with some great tech customers. And retail is our most recent vertical. This was a result of an acquisition that we made mid last year. A company we acquired in Hong Kong, and that allowed us to really get more into retail and really expand our international network. Happy to be here.
Thank you, everyone. So just as a brief introduction for this panel, so we'll be talking about container movement traceability and how digital transformation and innovation and the application of different technologies can tackle the problems that we have there. So to shed a little light on what we will be talking about, I brought some issues, some examples to refresh your memory. So in today's globalized world, the logistics industry faces numerous challenges that impact efficiency and reliability of container flow, such as the lack of real-time tracking of containers, data silos among the different players across this value chain, inaccurate data impacting visibility and leading to all kinds of inefficiencies, right? So I guess you all know what I'm talking about here. We have some iconic examples in recent times, like the Suez Canal blockage in 2021, highlighting the vulnerability of global shipping routes, port congestions in major hubs like Los Angeles, like Long Beach, cyber attacks on major shipping companies, showing how exposed our value chain is for disrupting operations. So this raises some questions, right? Like how the industry is dealing with those issues. How far are we for complete end-to-end visibility? Or how efficient we can get moving containers around the globe? So this is what we're going to discuss in the panel. So the first group of questions here is about this reality, okay? For us to see among different players what is this reality for a large importer, for a logistics service provider, for a software in this industry working globally. So Rob, let's start with you. With the perspective of a large importer, how perfect a traceability system would be, and what are the gaps that we have today to reach that?
Yeah, thanks. For us, we have partners at many of the key milestones for the movement of containers. So we have a SCN partner in Origin. We're contracted directly with the steamship lines, so we're gathering data from them. We have the destination of cargo management when they arrive, and obviously our partners on the drayage side. So we have many inputs of data. What we tend to find is they're very consistent. Prime example, I think we got a once in a generation snowstorm hit the Port of Savannah the other day, and we had some hot product coming in through the port, and over the course of the shutdown, just for 2 days at the port, we had one specific shipment
with 41 different ETA changes in the space of 2 days. And the 2 days may sound like insignificant in the scheme of things, but the data ranged across 17 different dates. So it wasn't just like everybody was saying, okay, it's moving and it's moving at the same time. We had a huge range of dates. The steamship line was actually giving us a date that had already passed. The port obviously knew when it was going to be reopening, so it could give us an estimate. And our drayage partner, they could also give us an idea of how quickly they could clear the backlog and get to us. But nothing lines up, so you're really left trying to jigsaw piece this together today to understand when your cargo can really get into the DC and then be available for sale.
Yeah. Jim, as a logistics service provider, how is your view about that, and how can you help with that?
Yeah, so as a global logistics service provider, we have to bring all these pieces together that Rob was just talking about, the earlier session was just talking about. You've got, when you think about a container moving from, a vendor's door to the customer's distribution center door, and all the players that are involved along that journey, everybody's got their own subset of data. And so, to Rob's point, you have to go out and collect it and figure out what you trust. So, that's what we do, is we bring it all together, we validate it, and make sure that you can trust that information. And when you think about it, the data is critically important, but it's your cargo, it's your product, it's where is it right now, when is it going to arrive, right? And it's whatever data your teams need to get that answer is what you're looking for. I think in the earlier session too, they were talking about comparing it to the airlines. Could you imagine if you booked a flight on United and you went and checked on Kayak and they said it's coming in at a different time, or you got to Chicago and they're like, oh, we're going to connect you through Detroit next, and you had no idea? That's what happens in the ocean industry every single day, right? And so we have to tie all these pieces together, figure out what we trust, what we don't trust, so that you have the information you need to make the next decision. And it's been in place for so long, but it's still so kind of isolated and broken in many ways. We do have some really good data aggregators out there, companies like Gnosis and Vision that bring great information to the table, and we use them as a component of our service offering, but it's really hard today to find one single solution for that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jim. So Tony, as a large operator on the container industry, how's your view about that?
Yeah, thanks, Andre. So DP World, the last 4 years, we've undergone quite a few acquisitions as an organization, particularly on the logistics side. Contract logistics, we're now operating over 300 sites globally. Just in terms of distribution, we stood up a freight forwarding capability in the last 2 years. We acquired a PO management company. But you know what's best right now is a port operator, as a terminal operator. So within North America, we do operate primarily in Canada, 5 ports. And I learned this afternoon in a quick conversation, we're 52% of the market in Canada. Prince Rupert is a key port operation. Centerm is a key port operation. And through the years, the company worked to develop smart port technology to improve visibility, container visibility for our customers. So at the port level, our customers are everyone. It's truckers, it's customs, it's ocean carriers, it's shippers. And so just to highlight a couple of systems and system solutions, one is a terminal operating system, Cargo's TOS Plus, and it has significantly improved the operational transparency in many of the ports we operate. And as an organization, we operate 86 globally, but that system is not deployed everywhere, but in time. But it integrates automated gate system information, employee rostering information, carrier information, and provides a unified view of port operations. From a customer standpoint, and to help the industry, the company's developed a number of apps, and one is known as the Digital Supply Surveyor app. And this allows customers to view and monitor port operations remotely, but in a real-time basis. So now they have visibility of the port operations, they can watch their cargo movement, and this has really enhanced problem resolution at the port level and has resulted in smoother operations in many of our ports. One in particular is Southampton. It's a large operation. And then from a community standpoint or from an industry standpoint, the company's developed a system called Cargo's Port Community System, PCS. And PCS is an example of a platform that enhances collaboration between regulatory bodies, customs officials, carriers, all the shareholders at the port level. And one key area, it centralizes documentation and improves the flow, and also, I'll say, the compatibility between ship manifests and customs declarations. So PCS is a system that really enhances efficiency and transparency at the port level.
Yeah, thanks. So we're already talking about technology, right? But to have much more detail on that, so we all know that technology has a huge role, right, in transforming traceability. So I want to know about you, Kirk, since you have big softwares working like everywhere. How data flow, visibility, and the value chain can be enhanced by softwares like that?
Yeah, Tony mentioned a lot of the technology that's available today, but I think it's important to kind of look back where we've come from, and I think we've made a lot of progress as an industry, particularly around instrumenting devices, having access to the data, moving more towards complete visibility, especially across bespoke supply chains. I think we get in the habit of thinking about one supply chain across the world that works a certain way, but there's many different types of supply chains as we think about it in the context of our conversation today. So one of the things that we're focused on is that transition from manual to automated to autonomous, not only at our terminal port facilities, but across the supply chain. So the platform's obviously important. Standardizing a platform where you have access to the data, we can share data across stakeholders in the supply chain, and actually look for challenges across that visibility. Visibility can also be seen as just a way of illuminating your challenges in the supply chain, and then actually doing something about it at the execution layer, which is incredibly important to us. So building up into visibility or down into the execution layer. So when you have a problem, you can actually do something about it in real time. So our applications are obviously pretty mission critical to the supply chain as a whole, especially in the container cargo supply chain. And it's really important that we're able to react quickly to new innovations that are required from our customers.
I just had a question to jump in to both of you guys from the port side. So do you feel like your customer is the importer, or do you feel like your customer is the carrier? And who should have access to that data, right?
So it's a great question. I mean, we could spend a lot of time talking about access to the data, but fundamentally, if you think about it, the ultimate customer is the person that's trying to move something from point A to point B. Saw a sign out earlier that somebody's branding, but which is good. The concept is somebody's trying to move something somewhere around the world, somewhere locally, and that's ultimately the customer, the person that has inventory in that box. So as you think about like a terminal just being a node on that supply chain, obviously the most value is created back at that beneficial cargo owner or that shipper. That's the terminal's customer many times. If it's an import-export terminal, it's the carrier's customer. Ultimately, they're the ones trying to get the product to the consumer market. So that's the way we look at it, just from the person trying to get it from point A to B back into the supply chain.
Thanks.
Great. So talking about IoT devices, so we discuss a lot about it, and we're trying to have some applications with it. But I would like to know, like a device such as container tracking systems or any device using IoT, are they really reshaping the game? What is the impact that this technology is having for anyone that would take that?
I saw a stat the other day that the CAGR on instrumenting the supply chain is about 20% a year now. So estimated at something like 25 million devices deployed by 2028. The more assets that are instrumented, the more data that's available, and the more of those challenges that I mentioned earlier you can solve. So it's obviously an important part of automation and autonomy ultimately to have those edge devices capturing and providing that data back out to the shareholders.
I think also we're seeing more carriers now attaching devices to containers and offering that as a service. I think that's a realistic option. One of the challenges we've tried in the past is using devices to put on pallets or inside of containers to track them. The challenge is the reverse logistics or even the outbound logistics of getting those devices out to 1,000 suppliers, right? Because the suppliers are loading these containers at their factories. And then when you get it back, how do you return it and get it to where you need it for the next trip? And so I think the more the carriers can support having the devices on the containers adds a lot of value, especially if you're looking at a container moving, through on the rail to a final destination, right? Now you have a single point of tracking all the way through. Then it comes down to who owns that data and how much do they charge for it.
I think the element that we're talking about here with the actual tracking of the container has some legs, but the container is still victim of the supply chain in a lot of ways. Like, it can get to a port and be held at the port for a multitude of reasons, and that while you know exactly where it is, you still don't necessarily know when you're going to get it. Right, that's fair. So I think that's the downside of trying to bank on that element. I think it has a layer to be fed into the data feed, but we can't rely on that as a single source of truth.
Yeah, an additional source of information.
100%.
I can't say it's reshaping the industry, but I think it all helps, right? Another source of data coming in. And certainly on the 3PL side, similar to what Jim is with Century, you're integrating with all these data sources. And if you're trying to manage and provide visibility, just say 5 key events, the more data sources you have to bring data in, you can match that data, do a better job of matching sort of this data weaving, and then through the reconciliation process. So then I think it produces a higher output back to the customer, and so ultimately better quality. So I think it helps. It's all good. It is a headache though, integrating with all these different data sources. So that's a tech issue. But overall, I think it's a gain. It's a positive, certainly.
We have a really good question that ties right into it. How do you find the truth when you get conflicting tracking information from different supply chain providers? And that's a reality. That's what you were talking about before with all the different ETAs that you were receiving, right?
Yeah, this is our conundrum every single day. We've got more than enough data. The problem is half of it's conflicting.
Right.
And so it's trying to depict the real truth through the maze. We've had to rely on some internal tools that we've built for the short term to try and help give that predictability to our sales team as to when products can actually be available and unloaded into the distribution centers. And it's using history to say, who was the most accurate at this point in time? Okay, let's take that snippet of data, layer that into our timeline, and then move to the next kind of port of call, so to speak, to see who was the most accurate at that element, and then kind of piecing it together. Today, that's how we're trying to solve for it, but there's definitely opportunity for a true door-to-door solution that is bringing real-time information by doing that scouring for us. We've just had to hire a data analyst, and that's her job. She pulls it from the best she can find.
And it's funny you say that because we do the exact same thing for all of our customers. So we take all this data, predicted ETAs from terminals, from carriers, from AIS providers, from third parties, from anybody we can think of, and then we score them and we decide who's best going into each terminal within a certain number of days and use them. But again, here's two people sitting on the stage doing that same thing just to get to a proper state of data, right? It should not be necessary today.
And it becomes even more complicated from my point of view. I want to see the answer globally. Yeah. So I'm not just looking for a North American answer on how quickly product's going to arrive into our American distribution centers, but I need to make sure that we're providing the feedback to our European teams and Australian teams. And of course, then you've got a whole new set of 3PLs or service providers that are having to then feed you bits of information. So it becomes very complicated quickly.
For sure.
Okay, so this leads to our next theme here. So talking about collaboration, Tony mentioned PCS and collaboration between the players. So it's another line of action to foster traceability and collaboration between the many players that we have in the game. So could you please share some thoughts about that? So let's start with Tony, please.
A little bit of an echo here. So that was is that around collaboration as far as? Yeah. So improving collaboration among partners, right, or among players. So within the industry, as we mobilize around a customer, we're competitors. So we have the competitive spirit. So we're aggressive and we want to be first and best in class and all that. But I think from a customer's standpoint, it's such a headache to identify product, where it's at, get that layer of truth. So it's important that we sort of shift our thinking and sort of the supreme act of collaboration and really work together to try to, on behalf of the customer, and try to present a better picture. So hard to do, challenging to do, but if you have a different mindset, and a customer should drive this too, a customer should be clear about their goals, around compliance, data timeliness, compliance. So be clear about that, and so express that, and then that's the entry to the game, and the supply chain partners should mobilize around that. And in an environment, maybe a periodic meeting, an annual meeting, communicate those goals, and then everybody, there should be KPIs and metrics to report on data performance. And so with that, everybody sees what everybody's doing, and that inherently, there's the good, bad, and ugly. Everybody wants to be good, no one wants to be bad and ugly, so that inherently will drive performance. And I think that with an open environment or an attitude of collaboration and trust, it'll build trust, and really thinking about this in terms of the customer and not so much as our own individual company. And that's hard to do because, again, we're all competitive and we want to see the best for our organization.
Yeah, if you take it back to the comment around bespoke supply chains and to double click, because it's a really good point about openness, Tony. If you double click on what that means from your specific supply chain perspective, if you take a terminal and you take a local distribution facility or a warehouse and maybe even further inland intermodal container distribution facility, that's a mini supply chain, if you will. And many times we find when we're talking to one of those customers in that description that there's value to be added somewhere in that chain if there was just better communications, better understanding of what the applications can actually do, and the ideas were shared more openly. Oftentimes, those members of the supply chain are customers or vendors to a customer for somebody in that supply chain, and those conversations just aren't happening. So, it comes back a lot of times just good old-fashioned getting the right people in a room to talk about the challenges that we're having. And what we've seen is planning and predictability, especially around setting a terminal up correctly for high-value freight coming through, or pre-planning, pre-notifications for late deliveries, things like that increase exponentially as we work through those use cases. So it's just important to focus on the particular issue at hand and not trying to boil the ocean, if you will.
When you talk about the issue at hand, too, it makes me think about, we integrate with large customers every day, and there's a lot of legacy, old integrations out there. And I'm always trying to drive people to think smaller when it comes to this. Like, how can you build an integration just for this specific piece of information, instead of layering all this data into one feed that is extremely complex to work with? When you have to change something, it's really hard. Like, we have customers on major ERP systems. We can only send them one ship notice because their ERP system can't handle changes to it. So then they have to go look manually to find out that a vessel's changed. We got to get past that, right? Like, we're so far advanced in so many other areas. And then, like, on the carrier side of it too, the carriers have come a long way with their APIs. Thankfully, DCSA, Digital Container Shipping Association, has done an amazing job at defining standards for APIs. Previously, with the ocean carriers, you had to work with each one of them in their chosen EDI formats. Today, there's a standard. So I think we're going to really start to see value coming out of that and the new data sets that they're going to offer. But as importers, as tech service providers and others, we need to be prepared to use that information and use it for the purpose it's designed. Sorry.
I think from our point of view as the importer, obviously the partnership with your digital solution is critical, but it also needs to be done with a level of setting expectation. Because it doesn't matter how intricate your algorithm is going to be, there's going to be weather, there's going to be something that comes along and changes the normal dynamic. So having flagging mechanisms that can help, but just setting that partnership up right at the very beginning so you understand kind of the world you're working in, and then also setting expectations. So if there is a major event that we've had plenty of this last few years, that you then work together to find the next best answer.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to take questions from the audience. There are some of them coming to our screen here. So if you have questions, please scan the QR code and ask them. We have one there. So in your opinion, are terminals doing enough and to make data publicity available so that globally active shippers can be their data? So talking about terminals and the willing to share information. I don't know who wants to take that.
Yeah, so I'll start and then I'll let you guys jump in after that. I absolutely do not think they're giving us enough information at all. It is painful to get the data, and we have to go and buy it from third parties. The carriers give us minimal information, even though they have a lot more of it available. So yeah, I mean, I think from a technology perspective, from a terminal perspective, the more information that we can get access to at an affordable cost too, right? Like, that's part of it too. I can't pay $10 for every container for every event that I want to get, right? So it has to be economical from a service provider standpoint for us to have this data to present to our customers. And so, yeah.
There's a ton of value in that data, obviously, and I agree the answer is certainly no, we're not. I think one of the challenges is, just quick example, not only do you have to get it from third parties, sometimes 3PLs or freight forwarders are scraping the information off of the individual terminal's website with bots. Like, it's that hard to get. I think it comes back to those conversations across the supply chain. It also comes back to that point you made about openness and thinking about where the real value to be added is. And it's not in like the data itself, but what you're doing with the data. So it's incredibly important to recognize that it's generally available. Think about ways of sharing that data and what are the challenges you're really trying to solve. That's where the value is, whether it's planning or more efficiencies at the terminal or at the endpoint, and not just, how are we going to monetize data? That's a real challenge today.
And security is a real point too. You have to know who you're sending this data to because you don't want the wrong people getting access to it, right?
So maybe I can punt a little bit here and just say it's a journey. And while I think the industry has done a lot better, we still have a long ways to go. And I will say this, prior to joining DP World and really on the 3PL side, I felt the operators did not provide enough information and it was always a challenge. I just see the effort going on within the organization and I see there's plenty of effort to try to do much, much better in that area. So, but it's a journey and we just have to continue to do better.
Yeah, that's the point.
Okay, so Rob, since you are the cargo owner there, so how do you see the willing to share information among like your suppliers in the value chain?
Yeah, I think we touched on partnerships a few minutes ago, and for us, I don't think we can get to the end game without having the partnerships and having the data available, whether that's paid data, to your point, or data that is just then kind of accumulated from the different points throughout the supply chain. But for us, we just really want to try and get to the nirvana, which is that real-time update. We have many, many pieces of data coming in that don't ever get updated, even though you're getting closer to the warehouse. So like, people need to start changing the mental element of once a data has been given, that's the starting point, not the end point, because so many things can change during the journey of that container that just issuing a date once it leaves the point of origin is kind of like, well, yeah, of course, but it's then keeping it real time and keeping it updated, and that for us is where the partnerships and the technology has to be either developed further or put on a plate to make it easier for us to access.
Yeah, that's great. We have a question also about AI cameras as a source of information in our operation. So how do you see it's been really applied? So in my case at Wilson Sons, we're trying to test some things and it's very hard, like having neural models to work on that and to really acquire data on that. So how do you see AI cameras being used and being a good source of information?
Well, I think it requires a little definition. So first of all, I think there's a lot of vendors and providers of advanced technologies in that area. So we've kind of moved beyond, are the cameras able to do the things that we need them to do? And we've moved back into the conversation we were having about instrumenting at the edge. So leveraging that data, because cameras have gotten a lot cheaper, a lot more sophisticated, but leveraging that data and sharing it the right way and doing something with it has become the great frontier for AI and machine learning capabilities. This is within yards, this is across the ecosystem in general. So we're seeing a lot of inbound requests and a lot of conversations with our customers about how do we light up yards differently, how do we capture data differently, leveraging the advanced camera technologies. I'd say in our industry as a whole, we're a little bit behind on leveraging the technology that's already available for all the reasons that we've talked about today. There's different things going on at different spots in the supply chain. So it is a great area of opportunity, I think, for our industry to improve, but we'll see moving forward.
I think we kind of have to wrap it up from there.
Okay, so we have like 30 seconds. I want to thank you very much for sharing all those good information and your perspective. thanks for the audience again. So as a wrap up, I guess I'll have Tony sentence just a few minutes ago that it's a journey, right? It's a lot going on, trying to tackle these problems, trying to enhance visibility and traceability of containers and other cargo. But we have some gaps, right? And then the client is still feeling some pain points. So I guess this is the key takeaway would be the key sentence for tonight.
We'll keep working on it.
Yeah, we'll keep doing that. So thank you very much.